this guy, Joe, calls me up and he's like, hey, Chris, my knee pain is gone. And I'm like, hey, Joe, you mean the knee pain of your rat? Because it literally says not for human consumption on the labeling. And Joe's like, yeah. Hey, if my rat weighs 275 pounds and does HIIT training on Wednesdays and Fridays, should my rat have additional servings on those Wednesdays and Fridays? So we knew what was going, and we left not for human consumption on our labeling, and for mostly because we didn't want to get in the supplement industry, but we did allow it to continue because in the literature, it was clear it was safe. Right? There was zero doubts. You have this longevity this toxicity study that ended up extending the lives of test subjects by 90%. This molecule is safe.
What if the longest mammalian lifespan extension ever recorded wasn't luck, but a signal? In 2012, a French study showed rats living 90% longer on a single molecule, yet most of us have never heard of it. Today, we're sitting down with the engineer and scientist who spent over 3 decades pursuing that signal, scaling it, refining it into something called ESS60. Chris Burres didn't start as a longevity expert. He started as a problem solver, asking what if oxidative stress, that invisible wear and tear at the cellular level, wasn't inevitable? What if there was a buffer? His answer reframes not just aging, but who we can become when we stop accepting the timeline we've been handed. This conversation is about the vision he's building, the science underneath it, and, it's choose your own adventure when it comes to the future of knowing your body and, let's say biohacking it. Chris Burres is an engineer turned longevity scientist and the co-founder of SES Research, which he started in 1991. As one of the first suppliers of scientific grade ESS60. He's the founder and chief scientist of MyVitalC, and he produces ESS60, which is a highly purified form of the Nobel Prize-winning molecule. And the 2012 Bati study in France, it was associated with rats living roughly 90% longer than controls, still cited as one of the longest mammalian longevity results on record. And he frames, as we'll see, the mechanism through what he calls the buffering oxidative stress system. That's BOSS theory. He co-wrote the book, Live Longer and Better, and hosts the Live Beyond the Norms podcast. His background spans mechanical engineering, the carbon nanomaterials industry, and, of all things, improv comedy. Welcome, my friend, Chris Burres, to the DNA of Things.
Dr. Jeremy, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to roll up our sleeves and get super geeky today.
Do you got an icebreaker joke?
Oh, there's an icebreaker joke. So I did comedy improv, right? And from time to time, people will ask, hey, say something funny. And I'm like, it's incredibly unfunny to go, well, that's not how it works.
That's it right there. That's the joke. That's like an Andy Kaufman style joke that we'll laugh about in 3 years. Right.
So, if you've seen the show, Whose Line Is It Anyway? Right. Where you have two improv actors on stage, they get some rules. They, probably like when I was doing it, we mostly got locations and relationships from the audience. And then we did a scene within the confines of that rule. And so to come up with something, I have written jokes. I have not performed jokes. So the short answer is we'll do something funny in the course of this.
We can only hope. We can only hope, right? Yeah, amazing. Well, really delighted to have you here today. This is not an area that I am intimately versed with, only the, kind of initial curiosities that our initial phone call triggered. So, walk me through this like I'm a 4-year-old. The Bati study, for example, well, let me preface it with this. I have experience working in industry where mice were selectively bred for a decade and they were at a double reproductive lifespan. It's like, mice or rats having babies. It would be like humans having babies till they're 120. And what they did there was they just took the ones that lived the longest and had the most babies and just mated them again and again. Yep. It took 10 years. Okay, but this is obviously something different. This is applying, cases versus controls with a specific molecule as the intervention. That's about as much as I would assume. But so how did that work? How did that unfold? And, what does longevity look like in rats?
Well, first, I want to say I'm very fond of the study you said. I'm very fond of mating, so that's very good. Doing the study that is the long-term study, maybe not ethically sound. Let me start at the foundation, right? So this ESS60 molecule, and if you're listening, I'm holding up a model of the molecule. And the best way to picture it is imagine a soccer ball where the lines on the soccer ball represent the bonds between the carbon atoms. You have a spherical molecule of 60 carbon atoms. The molecule was discovered in 1985 at Rice University. That's here in Houston, where our lab is based. And the three scientists went on to win the Nobel Prize for that discovery in 1996. So kind of a short 11 years from discovery to being awarded the Nobel Prize. My lab actually started manufacturing and distributing the molecule 5 years before they were awarded the Nobel. So we are the oldest and longest manufacturer and distributor of this molecule on the planet. The molecule is amazing. It's not just that it's a closed cage molecule. So you think about this spherical molecule that looks like a soccer ball. It was the first closed cage molecule. So it had no dangling bonds. And so the first closed cage molecule that was discovered, that would be a reason to win the Nobel Prize. There's a new symbol in chemistry because of this molecule. So the at symbol we're familiar with from our email address. So you can say lanthanum at this molecule, and that means lanthanum physically trapped inside of it, right? Because the space inside of the soccer ball shaped molecule is big enough for any atom on the periodic chart to fit inside of it. So lanthanum at this molecule means trapped inside, not covalently bonded to the exterior, not ionically bonded, but physically trapped. That would be another reason to win the Nobel Prize. It turns out this molecule performs as well or better than the current best material in almost every application. So it makes better inks, better batteries, better tires, better photocells. That's also a good reason to win a Nobel Prize. Now, this is often where people get a little bit nervous because I just said inks, batteries, tires, and photocells. We're talking about a health supplement. I would argue that nobody in your audience woke up this morning, looked at their car battery, and thought, I wonder what part of my car battery I should be taking on a daily basis for my health.
Mhm.
And the story gets a little bit worse first, and we've already kind of given away the spoiler is out there, but there's one shape on the exterior of this ESS60 molecule that is the same shape, but not the same formula as benzene. And in fact, that shape occurs 20 times on the exterior of this ESS60 molecule. Benzene is ubiquitous in modern society. We do not have modern society without benzene. If you just glance around you, everything that's plastic without the benzene ring is gone. Many medications have the benzene ring as the foundation, including aspirin, many detergents. We don't have modern society without the benzene ring, but benzene, when it's on its own, is known to be toxic and known to be carcinogenic. So because there's 20 of the benzene shapes on the exterior of this molecule, they assumed it would be toxic. They put it in a toxicity study, and here's where we get back to the study you mentioned in the intro. Instead of being toxic, the test subjects that they gave it to, in this case it was Wistar rats, lived 90% longer than the control group. And you kind of referenced it. It is the single longest longevity experimental result on mammals in history, peer-reviewed published research. I'm very proud to share my lab provided the material, and my lab is mentioned in that original study. And to kind of launch us off, I'll just share the most consistent testimonial that we get is people take the product in the morning, they report mental focus and energy during the day, and then better sleep that night.
Okay, so that's all amazing, but I got to tell you something crazy. Can I tell you something crazy?
Yes, please.
Harold Kroto, one of the there's three, right? Robert Curl and Richard Smalley. Harold Kroto came to my university when I was working on my undergraduate honors, and he actually gave a keynote presentation. So I actually saw him speak in 2003.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. Like,
Yeah.
When he passed, so they have all passed. When he passed, he was Sir Harold Kroto. I don't know if he was
That's right.
Sir Harold.
He was Sir then. He was.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, he got knighted, right, by the Queen of England because of the Nobel Prize, because of the discovery. And he did other amazing things. And interesting in this story, what is the role of Sir Harold Kroto, an astrophysicist, in the discovery of a carbon molecule, right? And he probably outlined this. He saw a spectrum. This is fun. I don't talk about this part of the story very often. He's looking at spectrum in space, and he sees a spectra that he can't identify. And he's suspicious that it might be carbon. Here at Rice University, Dr. Smalley and Dr. Curl have access to this device. Really, I think Smalley designed it and built it. He was an amazing scientist in his own right. And Dr. Kroto comes over to Rice University and he's like, hey, I want to put carbon in your machine. And what this machine does is you shine a laser at the carbon, you make this puff of gas, you take an inert gas and puff that vapor into a mass spectrometer so you can look at all the molecules that are made. And Dr. Smalley is like, no, I'm not putting boring carbon in my piece of equipment. I'm doing sexy things like titanium and exotic alloys. And so he's rebuked and he goes back to the UK, comes back sometime later. And he asks again and again. Dr. Smalley's like, I don't, carbon's boring. And then he goes away. And on the third trip, he asks Smalley again. And actually, again, Smalley says no, right?
Mm.
This is where the story's supposed to change. And it does change because one of Smalley's grad students grabs Dr. Croto and said, I'm going to come in over the weekend. I'll throw some of your boring old carbon into the equipment. He shows up on Monday. And ostensibly what they thought what they were making were graphene sheets, individual flat sheets of carbon lattices, but he had a peak at 60 and a peak at 70. And if you were just making flat sheets, why would you have a preponderance of 60 over 59 or 61, right? Why would a flat sheet of 60 show up more frequently than 59, 59 or 61? Same thing at the 70. And so they're like, okay, there must be something here. It was actually able to tweak the settings and increase that peak to give them more credibility. By the way, IBM had the exact same data 1 year prior, and they just wrote it off as an anomaly. So they get their heads together. They're trying to figure out this shape. And there's this kind of very dramatic moment that was written in the Houston Chronicle, the paper here, where Dr. Smalley puts it all together and then drops it. And this, eureka ball starts bouncing on the ground that he drops it as he drops it. So amazing story. There's always, I think, serendipity in science. Not always, but there's often serendipity in science.
Well, it's amazing how, and now with like love it or hate it, we have AI forever for now. The ability to bridge like interdisciplinary findings. I mean, the whole, drug discovery field is about reappropriation, right? And for example, I think whatever the drug name of Viagra was, I think it was originally being pursued as a hair loss solution. And again, reappropriated to what it is now. But okay, not to derail us too much, we got we got rats living 90% longer. So what does that mean for humans? Obviously, these trials are done in a mammalian model. Like, what are we seeing in their human counterparts?
Well, so two things. Let me start again. Most consistent testimonial: people take it in the morning, report mental focus and energy during the day, better sleep at night. If you are, and there's two pieces to that, which are one, if you improve sleep, you will improve mental, physical, and emotional well-being, right?
Yeah.
Like that's a great place to hang your hat. Hey, we can improve sleep. Great.
Right.
The next is, what can you take in the morning to positively impact sleep at night? And I've been asking this question for 8 years now. The other day, I had a peptide expert mention a particular peptide that I hadn't heard of. I could probably look it up or reach out to her. But other than, like, nobody has presented anything credible that you take in the morning and has a positive impact on sleep at night. You can certainly exercise right in the morning. That'll improve your sleep that night. You get some exposure to the sun. You'll get the circadian rhythm in line with the rising and falling of the sun. That'll help you sleep at night. But yeah, that's the first and most consistent thing.
I got you.
I will share, right? So we promised some humor. I have some humor in this kind of story of this initial publication comes out in mid 2012. About mid 2013, we start getting these phone calls from this crazy, wacky group of people called biohackers. And I can say that affectionately now because I am a biohacker. And they're like, hey, that stuff in that study where the rats live longer, how much should I take? And my business partner, Robert, and I are conservative carbon nanomaterial scientists, right? We've got our carbon nanomaterial scientist hat. We're thinking, wait, what you're asking is that stuff that we sell to research institutions around the world to put into ink, batteries, tires, and photocells, how much of that stuff should you consume? We thought the right answer was 0. We actually added not for human consumption to our labeling in mid 2013. So from 1991 all the way to 2013, we don't have not for human consumption on our labeling. Now we do. And that turned into an interesting situation where we're getting 2 to 3 phone calls per week. And those phone calls sound like this. This guy, Joe, calls me up and he's like, hey, Chris, my knee pain is gone. And I'm like, hey, Joe, you mean the knee pain of your rat? Because it literally says not for human consumption on the labeling. And Joe's like, yeah. Hey, if my rat weighs 275 pounds and does HIIT training on Wednesdays and Fridays, should my rat have additional servings on those Wednesdays and Fridays? So we knew what was going, and we left not for human consumption on our labeling, and for mostly because we didn't want to get in the supplement industry, but we did allow it to continue because in the literature, it was clear it was safe, right? There was 0 doubts. You have this longevity this toxicity study that ended up extending the lives of test subjects by 90%. This molecule is safe. So every quarter we're getting together and we're going, okay, we're still getting these 2 to 3 phone calls per week. Do we want to get into the supplement industry? Literally in the room right behind me, the conference room's right behind me. So Robert and I get together, and I think it's generous to say that the supplement industry is a challenged industry, right? And so we didn't want to do it. Like we're happy delivering commercial quantities of carbon nanomaterials to research institutions around the world. We didn't want to get into the supplement industry. And in fact, in this kind of time frame, I found a peer-reviewed published research paper that showed 50% of the supplements this research group had purchased off the market didn't have in them what they said they had in them. Right?
Yep.
Like that's a sign of the challenged industry. So quarter after quarter, we're saying we don't want to be in the supplement industry. Finally, at the latter part of 2017, a guy with a big YouTube following, that's how everything changes these days, starts sharing all the benefits he's getting, taking the product on a daily basis. And our phone changes from ringing 2 to 3 times a week to 10 times a day. Now, at that quarterly meeting, first off, we're like, I wish we were smarter. We should have probably done this sooner. And then next, we're looking back to that research paper where 50% of the supplements on the market don't have in them what they say they have in them. And we're like, we're a unique organization. We're the oldest and longest manufacturer of this molecule and distributor of this molecule on the planet. We have the lab. We have the exacting standards. We've been delivering to scientists. We probably need to get into this industry, especially given the fact that this industry is probably going to turn into the same space where 50% of the supplements on the market don't have in them what they say they have in them. That's just the writing on the wall. And then we asked ourselves 2 questions. And the first is a moral question. Are we comfortable selling it? So I take it. My wife takes it. Everybody on our team here takes it. By the way, not a requirement. Like you don't clock in here and then somebody is making sure you take your shot of My Vital C. Really, everybody on the team has access to the research like anyone else, but probably more importantly, they have access to the testimonials that are coming in. And there's testimonials, frankly, we just can't share. We've got to do research in order to be able to share them. Yeah, so that was the moral question. Then the legal question, that's the FDA and the FTC. You got to cross the T's, you got to dot the I's. We're doing that and have been doing that. And so in 2018, we started bringing this product to market. And, at this point, just trying to be a good steward of this product in the space.
Yeah. You use the word biohacker. It's like biohacker is like the new bro science, right? And I say that, affectionately because, as an athlete, I learned a lot of things from my peers. And they didn't have to be bros. They could be my sisters too. But there's something to be said for frontline learning, especially, people who are on, frontier goals, for example, like trying to break world records where, a little bit of inflammation or slower recovery, getting that fixed pays dividends. But it's interesting to see like a lot of these like citizen scientist initiatives popping up. One that I came across a few months ago it's called the Phoenix Project. And it's specifically for ApoE carriers. So if you have a specific variant of this ApoE gene, you're more predisposed, most likely going to get, this earlier onset of Alzheimer's. And so, looking at the website now, this Phoenix Project is, this guy, Dr. Kevin Tran, he's a doctor of pharmacy. I think he's a carrier, has organized this resource, and the group is kind of self-organized. And what they're doing is they're putting together all of their protocols, to essentially push out what they believe was previously a sentence. The long goodbye is what Dr. Lee Hood refers to it as in his book, The Age of Scientific Wellness, co-authored with Dr. Nathan Price, and Price is over at the Buck Institute now, and Hood is the founder of Phenome Health, doing a lot of publicly funded research. Anyway, this Phoenix Project is, like I said, it's just people putting their protocols together of their own initiative. But one of the things that becomes an increased risk factor to the already risk factor of the neurodegeneration is decreased sleep. I'm not promoting that this is where it should go, but I can't see somebody from this band of do-it-yourself citizen scientists wouldn't be very interested, given what you've just said about Vital C. So okay, but just quickly, you mentioned you take ESS60 yourself. Are you comfortable sharing your protocol, or are you kind of like me? I'm like, okay, all right, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, so we actually have 3 oils, right? And I put together a landing page for your audience. You won't find all 3 oils on that page. You might have to go through. We have olive oil, avocado oil, and MCT oil. First, let me address which one should you start with. We always suggest you start with the olive oil for 2 key reasons. The first reason is we're a science-based organization, and almost all of the research is on the ESS60 molecule in olive oil. So that's the number one. Number 2 is you get a higher concentration of the ESS60 molecule in olive oil. So you get about 0.8 milligrams per milliliter in olive oil, 0.6 in avocado oil, and then 0.3 in MCT oil. So less than half in MCT oil. My protocol is I actually put a teaspoon and a half of MCT in my coffee while it's mixing. And while that's mixing, I actually take a teaspoon and a half of the olive oil. If I've got busy days, if I'm at a conference, it's kind of fun at conferences. We do shots. We've got these little ampules. We've got these little ampules. They're little kind of plastic ampules, and we'll do shots of those throughout the day, which actually gives us the energy to, like, conferences are exhausting. When they're exhausting when you're attending, when you're actually running a booth, they're even more exhausting. Yeah. So that's my protocol: teaspoon and a half of MCT, teaspoon and a half of olive oil. I will share, we actually have some people that we record broadcasts with regularly, and they started sharing with me, when I take the product before my tough workout, I experience less soreness. Mm-hmm. And I had never really had that because I actually work out in the morning, come to the office, and then I'm taking my product. And I have been playing around with taking in the morning. I think there is an impact. And if you look at the boss theory, which we'll talk about here, I'm sure at some point, there are things that keep giving credibility to the boss theory. And one of them is just the sleep. The fact that you take something in the morning and positively impact sleep at night, that's a profound biological impact, right? Over a course of time. Most things that are impacting your sleep, well, frankly, all the prescription drugs are just depressants and knocking you unconscious. I think there is one on the market following Dr. Matthew Walker that can improve deep sleep. Be interesting to know what those measurements are, and so maybe there's some improvements there. But most things that positively impact your sleep are knocking you unconscious, and you're absolutely taking them right before you go to sleep. So even melatonin, I think there can be benefits of melatonin. You've got to be really careful about dosing and at what time, because of the role that melatonin plays in your body. I remember valerian was always good. Valerian is good at calming your mind, right? So instead of having this racing mind and you're ruminating about things, it just quiets that mind so you can go to sleep. But other than those 2 things, those are things you take right before you go to sleep. And I don't know if I asked your question. I feel like I've been talking a while.
No. So you mentioned like the protocol of like the MCT plus the olive oil. So does that mean that you take it with the ESS60?
Yeah. So basing each of our products, so olive oil, avocado oil, MCT. Mm-hmm.
Oh, I see.
We'll just focus on olive oil as a high quality extra virgin olive oil.
I see.
With as much of the ESS60 molecule as we can get to dissolve in it. So there's 2, just real quick, there's 2 things to share. It is a high quality extra virgin olive oil, so it will leave a peppery flavor at the back of your throat. That is a sign of a high polyphenol rich, oleocanthal rich olive oil. The next, and this is just a fascinating stat, right? So our typical recommended serving is 1 teaspoon. 1 drop of our olive oil has more than 400 times as many of this ESS60 molecule in it as you have cells in your body in just 1 drop. Now, this starts to make sense when you think about where the boss theory will suggest that we're operating at the level of the mitochondria. We know from peer-reviewed published research it gets into the mitochondria. If you're trying to impact the mitochondria, and there are between 50 and 5,000 mitochondria in every cell in your body, 2 million actually in your brain and neurons, you need to have a lot of these molecules in order to try and saturate those.
Sure. Gotcha. It's not that you're just taking olive oil, you're taking the MyVital C olive oil, which is infused with the ESS60. Okay.
Exactly.
Right. So, okay, the boss theory. Let's walk through that. Like I'm a 4-year-old. So this is, obviously to do with, well, over to you. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll start here, right? Because my role as the chief scientist was like, what's going on with this molecule, right? First off, sleep, great. We can hang our hat on sleep. That'll improve your mental, physical, and emotional well-being. Next, I kind of was like, well, why did these rats live longer? What does the medical community think about aging? And they don't all agree, but they tend to think of it as an oxidation and an inflammation process. There is an ad hoc study on the web showing our formula to be 172 times more powerful than vitamin C. There is peer-reviewed published research showing it to be 125 times more powerful than vitamin C. So I'm in Houston, we put a big old check mark on antioxidant. When it comes to inflammation, you have to be really careful about how you speak about inflammation because the FDA equates conversations of inflammation with the diseases of inflammation, which are the diseases of aging. So, arthritis, Alzheimer's, cardiovascular disease, cancer. So, if I come on your show and I say, hey, we address inflammation, the FDA hears me claiming we cure cancer, we cure cardiovascular disease, which is not what we're doing. We're not making those claims. There is so much research that we need to do to be able to make those claims, and it's frankly really expensive. So that's kind of oxidation and inflammation. And that's great, kind of good explanations, but I like to dig deeper. And we ended up landing on the boss theory. And I've already mentioned one thing. The things that give credibility to the boss theory are the fact that there's peer-reviewed published research showing the ESS60 molecule to get into the mitochondria. And then we also know from way back in the 90s that this molecule can hold up to 6 negatively charged particles on the exterior of the cage. First, I'm going to paint a science picture, and then I'm going to do a 4-year-old version as you requested, but it won't be 4-year-old appropriate, but you'll see what I mean when I get there. So mitochondria, powerhouse of every cell, between 50 and 5,000 mitochondria in every cell in your body, except for your blood cells, which have 0, and your brain and neurons have 2 million. I just always find it fascinating how much energy our nervous system uses relative to our other systems. Like any power source, there is a negative byproduct. You think about your car going down the road, there's exhaust. You think about a power plant, there's a smokestack. In the case of mitochondria, it's reactive oxygen species. The way I like to picture these is they're like little bumper cars, right? If they're left to their own devices, they run around the body, and everything they smack into, they cause rust, oxidative stress, oxidative damage. And that sounds horrible. And it is, but like so many biological systems in our body, there is a way to manage those reactive oxygen species, and that is the internal glutathione and melatonin. These are internal to the mitochondria. Melatonin, sleep hormone, our most consistent testimonial. Sleep, great, like there's some nice parallels here. So in a healthy mitochondria, it's producing reactive oxygen species, and they're being managed by the existing glutathione and melatonin. But what happens when you stress a mitochondria? So first off, how do you stress the mitochondria? I point out, if you're alive in modern society, you have stressed mitochondria. In fact, you should be stressing your mitochondria with tough workouts. It's something that I certainly absolutely believe in. I would imagine you do as well. But there's other ways like smoking, drinking, EMF exposure because you're walking around with your cell phone, EMF exposure off of devices, airplane flights, tough emails, tough traffic. Anyway, you have stressed mitochondria. And when you have stressed mitochondria, it starts producing more reactive oxygen species than can be managed internally. And that's when, if they're left to their own devices, they start running around the body. Everything they're smacking into, they're causing that rust. And that's where the ESS60 molecule comes in. Peer-reviewed published research shows it in the mitochondria, and it holds on to up to 6 of the negatively charged particles so that they can't run around like little bumper cars and do damage. And then when that mitochondria can replenish the glutathione and melatonin, then it can grab those reactive oxygen species and manage them appropriately. All right, so here comes my 4-year-old explanation, fourth grade explanation, but not appropriate. I believe all biological analogies should start with Mardi Gras. I mean, a lot of biology happens at Mardi Gras, so why not? It's the end of Mardi Gras, and you have these drunk reactive oxygen species running around on Bourbon Street, causing this oxidative stress, smashing windows, spray painting walls, whatever they're doing. And you have the New Orleans Police Department, the glutathione and the melatonin coming onto Bourbon Street, handcuffing themselves to those reactive oxygen species and getting them off of Bourbon Street. But what does the New Orleans Police Department do when they get overwhelmed? They take those reactive oxygen species and they stick them in a paddy wagon. They attach them to the exterior of the ESS60 molecule so they can't do any damage. And then when that New Orleans Police Department can replenish the glutathione, replenish the melatonin, then they can handcuff themselves to those reactive oxygen species and get them off of Bourbon Street. And that is why we call the ESS60 molecule the boss, a buffering oxidative stress system. And the summary here is we believe we're reducing the negative impact of stressed mitochondria. And given the importance of mitochondria and its preponderance in every cell in your body, if you reduce the negative impact of stressed mitochondria, you should have systemic benefits. You should have what we have, which are head-to-toe testimonials.
Gotcha. So BOSS, to summarize, is buffering oxidative stress system. How is that this, and if you don't know the answer, that's okay. How is it different from like what I've been hearing about methylene blue?
Interesting. So there are some people out there who will say that methylene blue, red light therapy, and ESS60 are the trifecta of
Mm,
mitochondrial support.
mm,
My understanding is that methylene blue actually works in the electron transport chain, so it
yeah,
actually speeds up the production of ATP, which would also have the downstream impact of actually producing more reactive oxygen species. We
right.
believe it's after the ATP goes off to the cell to provide the energy and the reactive species is getting spun off like the smokestack from a power plant. This is holding on to those. And again, your body has a natural way to manage those reactive oxygen species, glutathione and melatonin. It's in this, it's interesting because there's zero doubts why the mitochondria was built this way. If you didn't allow the mitochondria to produce energy, if it was producing this negative byproduct, reactive oxygen species, that you didn't have the available resources to manage, then you would have a limitation on energy. The smart thing is, let's produce the ATP even if the downstream impact is going to cause damage, because we need to get away from the lion, right? The
Mhm.
downstream reactive oxygen species damage is irrelevant if you're trying to survive a lion attack, right? If you're
Right.
trying to catch food. So your whole mitochondrial system is designed to be able to produce lots of ATP more than the damage can be managed.
Yeah. Well, it really is a fascinating story for those who want to dive in more. The whole, I think it's Lynn Margulis who proposed the endosymbiotic theory, where some ancient eukaryotic cell got tired of just eating and digesting, which would have been an ancient mitochondria, and instead of digesting them, decided to farm them, right? And so it's like you say, there's a waste product that comes when you deal with livestock, as an example. And so as you said, it's like short-term gain as a trade-off for long-term practice, and elucidating that in the day and age of cell biology, but also genomics, like the mitochondria has its own genome. I mean, the trafficking of DNA back, or expression products back and forth from the nucleus to the mitochondria and vice versa, is just astounding. I mean, it's a beautiful symphony, but of course, I suppose what we're talking about is how do we tune the instrument? Now, in terms of ESS60 and MyVitalC, like I've got a good picture of where you are now. Where are you guys going as a company? What are you looking to do? What's your kind of North Star, if you will?
I'm gonna answer that question, and maybe a question that you have a little bit farther down, which is because it all compiles together. What might somebody experience on the product, right?
Mm,
And I'll tell you, there are some people who get like one drop of it in their system and they're like, wow, I can feel that this is impactful. There are people who are in tune with their bodies. I am not that person. Like
mhm.
there's too many data points where I'm like, I think I'm like this. And then a doctor asks a few more questions and was like, I was wrong. So apparently I'm like that. So some people right away, but we think of it in terms of like a 3-month process, right? And it has parallels with that consistent testimonial of focus and energy and better sleep at night. So month 1 really is about focus and energy. And there's one testimonial that I lean on here. We got some product to an influencer. She took the product in the morning, sent in her video that night, and she pointed out that she didn't finish her cup of coffee. Now, if you're a coffee drinker, like it's one to not finish it, right? But if you notice you didn't finish it, it's because you always finish it. Right. Like you just always finish it. And I think I shared, like, it's part of my coffee routine. I used to be a 2 to 3 cup of coffee per day person. When I initially was kind of taking it, not taking it regularly or consistently, I could get to the middle of the afternoon. And if I thought, hey, I need a nap or I need another cup of coffee, I could always look back and I had forgotten to take the product that morning. So really focus and energy is month 1. Month 2, we kind of lean on deep sleep. And I really do believe that deep sleep is happening in month 1. That's part of what's driving the focus and energy, and kind of the longer term focus and energy. But everybody gets a little bit more or less sleep per day, right? And so to equate, oh, I started taking my Vital C and my overall, the aggregate of my sleep is better, that can be hard to do. At about month 2, people kind of recognize that. My business coach actually shares that for 50 years, he needed an alarm clock to wake up. When he started taking my Vital C, he wakes up before the alarm clock. And like he's a business coach, right? So he's got late night mixers, late night dinners. None of that matters unless he doesn't get the product for about 10 days. And then he shares that he needs to use the alarm clock again. And that coincides in the literature. This molecule gets out of your system in about 10 days. And then at month 3, if you think about reducing the negative impact of stress mitochondria, you have this kind of mitochondrial, we'll call it efficiency. Again, we're just helping the mitochondria do its job and then giving it some buffer. And it's at this point we start getting testimonials that we actually can't share. We have to do research. And we're actually doing 3 research projects. One of them is already started. It's a frequent and severe headache study that's born out of my own personal testimonial, my wife's testimony, and testimonials. I was on a podcast. The second she had me back on her podcast, and for 30 minutes, she thanked me about the impact it had on her husband's migraines. So we're doing a frequent headache, and we can't call it migraine, but we're doing a frequent and severe headache study. That one's actually already started. It's in kind of beta. We're slowly recruiting participants. The next one is HSCRP. So that stands for high sensitivity C-reactive protein. It's an inflammatory marker typically associated with cardiovascular disease and cancer. We have one particular physician that pointed out a significant reduction in HSCRP in his client base and actually just said, we believe it should be in the employees' break room for them. There's also a Beagle study where it's reduced HSCRP. So we're doing a formalized HSCRP study. Next is a more formalized sleep study, because we already did an ad hoc sleep study. It was a crossover study. It was a low cohort. The most important piece of that study is that 100% of the participants reported improvements in sleep when they were taking the product. And then finally, we do actually have a cosmetic product. It's a 2-parter. It's a peptide and the ESS60 molecule. Such rave reviews that we're going to do a wrinkle and age spot study. So those are, you kind of ask the future. Yeah. It is these studies.
Cool. Yeah. If you're up to it, I just had the CEO of Sleep Cycle on previously, and they have a hands-free, no wearable tracker. It's just your phone. They've actually got like a sleep apnea diagnostic in FDA approval right now, but they've been around since, 2009. They're like one of the first. They were the first sleep app on the App Store, and it was actually the founder was a gamer, and he just needed to biohack his sleep.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's turned into one of the most downloaded and used sleep apps, and it's now like clinical. And what I find that's really interesting about it is it doesn't just track your sleep, but it tracks your breathing, coughing, and anyway, getting off point. But, that's, I think the beautiful thing about where we are is there's so much great opportunity for collaboration and to do, like I think about studies that I did in university versus studies that are, being organized in industry or being self-organized. You look at like the work that 23andMe really started, right? Is like 10 million people with their genetics sequenced, and, all of this self-reported survey stuff has, produced some really amazing insights. Like not maybe least of all is, tolerance of the COVID vaccine. But just to know that you guys are out there and doing that is pretty amazing. And in a sense, it's like your audience is building the solution with you. Clearly this is one of those moments where I know we only book an hour podcast, and this could have been a 3. So we'll have to get you back on a second round of this if you're up for it. But, before then, I just wanted to, before I thank you, how do people find you? How might they participate in, the product itself? Are you recruiting subjects? Like, how can this podcast help with, what it is you're trying to do with My Vital C?
Yeah, well, thank you. I made a URL for your audience. So that's going to be myvitalc.com/the DNA of things. Let me walk you through what we have on that page, because there's some free stuff and there's some stuff that I'm really proud of. I did a longevity summit. I interviewed 57 experts in longevity, including Ben Greenfield, Stephen Gundry, Dave Asprey. And I asked everybody for some tips and tricks for living longer or living healthier. I compiled those into 18 biohacking tips. So that PDF is available right at the top of the page. Just need your name and email, so it's absolutely free. We do have a coupon code on the page. You do have to go to that page to get that coupon code. And then we have some specials that you can't find on the website just for your audience. And we break these down into, hey, buy 2 bottles, 3 bottles, or 6 bottles. The logic on the 6 bottles, which actually has a 40% discount. So go use the link, take advantage of that discount and the coupon. The logic here was, hey, we think of our product in terms of a 3-month experience. Maybe you want to buy 3 for you, and then 3 for somebody else who might need that experience. Or you could be like me, I would just selfishly keep all 6 for myself. You can also get a subscription. There is a slight discount on subscription, even if you only want to, and of course, it gets shipped every 2 months, every 3 months, or every 6 months. So even if you only want to try one batch, go ahead and go on subscription. Our customer service team has 1,000 5-star reviews on Google. They are not trained to talk you out of canceling your subscription. They're trained to help you. They do an amazing job. It just turns out most people don't cancel their subscription. Then as we scroll down the page, the next thing you have is it's called our Inside Out set. So it is our Skin Reduo set, right? So this is a peptide called UTH29, Youth 29, great age to stop aging, and then ESS60. The ESS60 is oil soluble. The peptide is water soluble. We could have shoved these together with an emulsifier, but emulsifiers are not good for you. So we wanted to use as little emulsifiers as possible. And so it's separate, and you do 2 squirts of the UTH29 lotion, 2 drops per squirt of the ESS60 activator, so you can get that inside and outside set. Why be better on the inside and not on the outside? And finally, at the bottom, what I'm really proud of is you mentioned I do have the book, Live Longer and Better. Your journey to living longer and better has never been more achievable than today. It's available on Amazon for $19.99. It's also available on that link for $19.99. For $10 extra, I'll autograph it for you, and 100% of that $10 fee goes to Operation Underground Railroad. You may remember a movie called The Sound of Freedom, which was an amazing movie about a horrible topic, child exploitation. Operation Underground Railroad is doing an amazing job of getting that off of our planet. So 100% of that signature fee goes to Operation Underground Railroad.
Amazing. I love it. Thank you so much for putting that package together for the audience. I'll definitely be trying it myself. I have 2 of the 3 trifecta. I was using the methylene blue plus the
red light.
The red light, yeah. And still there's like the kind of cognitive decline of past 45 minutes of screen time, and I don't want to go back to something that I know which works, is for me anyway, and I'm not recommending this, is nicotine. It's too addictive, too expensive, and not a long-term solution. So really looking forward to giving this a try. And as I said, Chris, thank you so much for being my guest today here on the DNA of Things. Looking forward to having you back soon.
Thank you, Dr. Jeremy. This was fantastic.
Chris spent decades watching a truth emerge from the data. We're not prisoners of aging. We're participants in it. The ESS60 molecule, the buffering oxidative stress system, BOSS, the research, these aren't abstractions. They're invitations to a radically extended, clear life coming from better sleep. But here's what matters. A vision without participation is just a dream. You now carry the knowledge most people don't. You've glimpsed a future where longevity stemming from complete rest and better sleep isn't about adding years to your life, but it's about adding your years, that is, full of clarity, vitality, and presence. The question isn't whether that future is possible. The question is, how do we start to step into it? Thank you so much for joining me on the DNA of Things, and we will catch you next time.